Hello, welcome to Abroad Experience Podcast. This is a place where we come to share some stories abroad, some ideas that we get to hear, we get to listen to them and respond to them if you can. And today we have a guest. As always, we are having guests to come and join us on this podcast. And today we have a wonderful guest. His name is Clifford Brown. He's going to be with us here shortly. And he's going to share a story of USAID. Do you call it USAID or how do you call it in your place? Because it's called differently in different parts. Now, that's a story that's gone, but it's always good to look back and see what was it, what went wrong, how did we end up where we are. And that will be heard from our guest today, Clifford. So please help me welcome on stage our wonderful guest, Clifford. Hello, Clifford.
All
How are
right.
you?
Glad to be here.
Yeah, thank you for coming to our episode. Where are you?
It's my privilege. I'm been looking forward to your show. I'm happy to share what I've been able to, whatever wisdom I've accumulated over the years. I lived overseas for probably half my life, so I'm
Yeah, and where are you right now?
I'm in Maryland, right between Baltimore and Washington D.C. I'm about 40 minutes north of Washington D.C., about 20 minutes south of Baltimore.
And that is where you were born, or did you
Oh,
relocate at some point in life?
born on the far side of the country over in Washington State on the Pacific side. Um, I uh, I ended up here because, well, for one reason, my wife prefers it here. She's from Kyrgyzstan, but I met her when I was living in Bishkek, Kyrgyzstan. I was posted there with my agency, and most of her Kyrgyz friends happen to live in the DC area. So when I retired from my position in Peru in 2016. We came here instead of going back to the West Coast, so she prefers it here. And I was most of my professional colleagues are from the government, so I decided it would be an interesting experience to live on the East Coast.
That's wonderful. Now, you talk about your occupation in Peru, but then that's not where you began. I know you've had a long career, I guess, and maybe you can tell us where it all started and how did you end up in Peru and where were you back, I mean, before that?
Well, I guess to go back originally, and when I was in high school and college, I debated the subject of American foreign aid. There were different questions, and I became interested in the subject. And I went to college in my home state in Washington State, and after college, I won a fellowship that allowed me to travel in Latin America. And I spent a year in traveling around in Latin America. I learned Spanish. My cousin had been in the Peace Corps in Chile, and I lived with his father-in-law. He, by the time I got down to Chile, he had married a Chilean woman, and they moved to the U.S. But I ended up visiting her dad in Chile, and I lived there for the better part of a year. And I got out of there just before there was a coup, a military coup that killed Salvador Allende. He was the socialist president of Chile at the time, and it's always been very controversial. I have to be very careful whenever I meet Chileans because I never know which side of the fence they're on. It was a very polarized country. Anyway, to make a long story short, I, I I spent the year in Latin America. I ended up coming back to Los Angeles. I went to law school there. I had followed a girlfriend there, and I practiced law for almost 12 years. I was a partner in a firm, but part of me always wanted to go back and use my Spanish professionally in a job. So I got in 1987, I got an offer from USAID, which was, I didn't know what it was, but it was our foreign aid agency. And I flew back to DC. I interviewed with some people. One guy showed me a big map on the wall, and he had little pins all over the world. And I said, "What are those red pins?" He said, "That's where our attorneys are." And something in me said, "I got to have this job." So I I gave up my partnership in the law firm, most of my income, and I joined the Foreign Aid Agency. And I spent the next 27 years I lived in 7 countries, Kenya, Honduras, Guatemala, Nicaragua, Colombia, Kyrgyzstan, Guinea, and then Peru. I don't know if that was 7 or 8, because all except the last one, I was a U.S. diplomat. In the last one, I was a contractor. I had retired in 2007. Actually, it was 2009 now that I think about it. But I got bored in retirement, so I took a job as a contractor and went back to Peru. And I was there for 3.5 years, but I wasn't a diplomat there. And then I came to the East Coast. So that's my story. And then last year, Elon Musk, the world's richest man, was allowed to feed my agency to the woodchopper. That's how he puts it, where he destroyed our agency. And I had so many good friends, very dedicated people that had spent their careers working in foreign aid. So it upset me, and I ended up writing a book about my experiences in USAID. That's what got me interested in your podcast, just to tell people about my book. But I'm happy to talk about what it was like living overseas in so many different places. I feel very lucky to have had the experience, and I wouldn't say that agency is completely gone. Legally it exists, although it's not doing anything now. It's been drastically reduced, but by law it still exists, and someday it may get revived. I hope it does, because it was a real tragedy when they destroyed it.
Yeah, when you talk about meeting Chileans and not knowing what to say because you don't know what side of what side they are, it happens with just about everything. Even us talking about, you said will meet those people who say they are for it. There are those people who are okay, it's gone, and so you never know. So it's good to hear it from someone who's been there, done that, and can just get us into the picture of what it was.
Well,
But yeah, okay, go ahead.
people talk about the now it was the agency that always responded to disasters overseas. It had a lot of health programs overseas, a lot of humanitarian work, and a lot of children are dying now because it doesn't have those programs. But it was far more than that. It was the tool that the US government used to do anything overseas that was not military and was not purely diplomacy. So I'll just give you a few examples to give you a sense of the variety. When the Soviet Union fell apart, it was our agency that was asked to hire attorneys and accountants to go there and teach the former bureaucrats in the Soviet Union how to manage a capitalist economy, and teach private industries modern accounting standards, and teach the legal system how to deal with modern commercial disputes and whatnot. When environmentalists were concerned about the lack of any corridor in Central America that the animals could travel north and south on freely, it was our agency. We were asked to set up a corridor of national parks, and we got the governments together. Basically, we paid for a lot of meetings so that the government people could talk to each other from the various governments in Central America, and we set up a corridor of national parks that would go back and forth. When smoke from forest fires in Central America was drifting into Texas and Florida, it was our agency that got the call to do something about it. Hire some tankers and spray water on those fires. We created entire industries. There was one that I talk about in the book. We sent a contractor down to the mountains of Honduras to see if they could grow onions down there, and they did, and they sent a container to Miami, and 10 years later, 500,000 people are earning their livelihoods growing onions in Honduras. And we did the same thing with strawberries in Guatemala. We did it with melons and cantaloupes in Salvador, with shrimp farming in the Gulf of Fonseca in El Salvador and Nicaragua. We did it with flowers in Colombia and Costa Rica. when the governments of certain countries wanted to improve tax collection, we would send advisors there to study the problems in their tax collection system and make suggestions as to how to improve the efficiency of the tax system. When the water system in Kyrgyzstan was falling apart, we sent people there to study what was wrong with it and teach people how to better maintain it. When business associations, I could go on and on. I could spend the entire hour giving you examples.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very difficult agency to describe precisely because of the vast variety of things we did. In a sense, it spanned the entire range of human activity. So it's, people lament the loss of the humanitarian programs and the disaster responses, and that's very serious because a lot of people are dying because those programs no longer exist. But it was more than that. It was basically anything that we wanted to happen overseas where it needed a response that was not military, and it was too much for just the diplomats in the embassies to handle. So you name it. I mean, it was wide open. And this is actually the second book. The first one I wrote, which didn't finish the story, was called Dilettante, because that's what I felt I was. I thought I was a lawyer at first, so I was able to sort of fly. My jobs were always regional. I was able to fly around to different missions and talk about, the legal issues that they had. So I had a bird's eye view of a vast number of not just programs, but missions and personnel issues and labor issues. And I felt privileged to be able to dabble in so many different areas. I had to learn the foreign aid law that governed what we did, and also our procurement law. But the areas we worked in there were hundreds of them, and I was able to dabble in all of those and learn a little bit about them. So that was the fun part of it.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, it's quite an experience. And how many countries in total did you work in as you are?
It's north of 60. I counted them at one point, just places I'd been, but I lived in the ones I mentioned. But when I was in DC, I started off in DC, and I was responsible for programs in Haiti and the Dominican Republic. Were places I would travel there. Most of the work I was doing over the telephone from Washington D.C., but I had to go down there several times. I went to Haiti when we terminated our programs there because they had a military guy, Raul Cedras, and he called their army out once when they were having elections, and the troops actually shot voters as they were standing in line to vote. And I had to go down there the very next week to terminate contracts because our Secretary of State announced that we were terminating all of our assistance to the government of Haiti. And I had to go down there. I saw the bodies on the road as I would take an embassy car down to the embassy in Port-au-Prince. And I was in many places that fell apart quickly and unexpectedly. I was in Guatemala the very day that the president ordered the army to surround the Congress and surrounded the Supreme Court, and he arrested all of the judges in the parliament and in the court and all the Congress people in the Congress. That didn't last. About a week later, he was on his way to Panama because the army booted him out. When we informed them that if they were going to permit this, that they wouldn't be doing any business with us. And of course, the generals took that quite seriously because they make a lot of money on the side running some of those businesses.
Mm-hmm.
I was in Kyrgyzstan, and I was the acting DCM. DCM means the Deputy Chief of Mission. That's the ambassador's number 2 guy. The reason I had that, I was acting because the real guy was on vacation, so he asked me to do that. I was the USAID representative at the time, but during that night, I became the acting DCM the night that the so-called Tulip Revolution happened. And that's when what I call rent-a-crowds, there were 2 rich guys that hired crowds to sort of battle each other in front of the White House, their version of the presidential palace. And the president had told his army, he said, I don't want any deaths, so I don't want any ammunition in the guns. Well, the crowd figured it out, and they got over the fence, and Kyrgyzstan fell apart that night. It's never been the same. I was in Guinea Conakry when Lassana Conte died. He had been their dictator for over 20 years, and there were factions in the military then that started to fight with each other, trying to take control of the situation. I was in these places that where the social consensus fell apart so quickly and unexpectedly, and I'm starting to fear that something like that could happen in the U.S. now because of all the political polarization that we see here. I don't think we're immune to it. I think it's this lack of social consensus, or the fragility of the social consensus. You're seeing it everywhere,
Mm.
everywhere.
Yeah, and nobody is immune to anything. I mean, you wake up tomorrow and something that you didn't expect is happening where you did not expect. So I get it when you say that you're not immune either. Now, I come from Kenya, and we are always happy hearing our name. Hey, Kenya. At what point were you in Kenya? What did you do there?
Well, mimi ningetaka kusema maneno machache juu ya mambo hiyo. I
It's
learned
wonderful.
Swahili there that I was able to use it on the street, and I really enjoyed
Mm,
my time in Kenya. I learned how to scuba dive down in off of Mombasa. I went to the game parks, and it was our base. You know, we had a regional mission there in Nairobi. Fortunately, I got out a couple of years before the bombings happened, where they bombed the U.S. embassy there. But I was in the Union Tower building, which is you probably know it. It's a big round building in downtown Nairobi.
yes.
We lived out on Loresho Ridge, Kibagari Way, and I have very fond memories of my time in Nairobi. And we used to drive down to Mombasa on the highway, and I remember stopping somewhere near the Tsavo Park, and baboons would climb on our car and reach down through the sunroof, and we would feed them potato chips, and we'd see the mothers on the hood of the car with the babies hanging under them. And it was a great time. My kids went to the International School of Kenya. I had a third grader and a fifth grader when we got there, and I was there 3.5 years and really loved it. It was a phenomenal experience. And that's a good place to travel because, you know, the flights, the Kenya Airlines has flights to every other place in Africa that we needed to go. So I used that as my hub. But I covered Namibia, Madagascar, Eritrea. Spent 6 weeks in Eritrea. Got to Addis Ababa in Ethiopia several times. Zambia, Kampala, Malawi, Lilongwe, and Kinshasa. Got over to Kinshasa 2 or 3 times.
Hmm.
It was a
Well,
great time.
that's wonderful. And the Swahili that you spoke is, I guess you know quite a lot of Swahili by just what you spoke.
Jambo Bwana.
Jambo Bwana. I'm curious, how many other languages do you
Asante
speak?
sana.
Yeah, Asante Sana. How many other languages maybe do you know? Have you learned over the years?
Well, I told you the first one was Spanish, and I learned that when I was on that fellowship, and then the government sent me to school to learn Russian and French. So I'm professionally qualified in Russian, French, and Spanish, and not in that order. Spanish is virtually a second tongue for me. I can rattle on. You won't even know I'm an American if I start speaking Spanish, but except for my appearance. But in French and Russian, I can do okay. I've negotiated with the governments, and I've appeared on television and radio, but people know I'm a foreigner who learned that language in a school, so that's
Mhm.
obvious. My Swahili was never great, but it was enough to get around, and I had a lot of fun with it. So,
Yeah, it is great, the ones that you've spoken. And what would you say? Because there's someone who could be listening and maybe is thinking of going around the world, or maybe he's already doing so, and he he maybe only knows English, or maybe his mother language, wherever it is that he comes from. What would you say about learning other languages, as many as one can?
you know, learning another language is like you've grown another soul. I mean, you start to think and feel differently, and especially if you learn it well. If you learn it to the point where you can read some of the poetry and really get immersed in the culture, it expands your person. in a way that nothing else does. And I failed miserably at 3 different languages before I finally got determined to learn Spanish. But after I had learned it well, I became a very enjoyable experience. And I'm studying Mandarin now for the same reason. I want to expand my personhood. I mean, it really allows you to relate to people, and it's a bridge that I don't think people appreciate, what difference it makes in your life. And for people that are interested in it, it's also very appealing. It's to the development business. I mean, development as a business has not disappeared. There's a lot of other donor programs that are out there, and we always employed far more local people than we did Americans. I mean, everywhere I was, the local staff was much larger than the American staff. So, and that's the real pity. One of the pities of this program being destroyed is all those people lost their careers too. But if you have another language, then you're much more attractive to the development agencies. They'll pick you up in a minute if you've got some skills that they think would be useful in their programs. So it's not only good for your personhood and your sense of self, it's an economically useful thing to have.
And you're still learning.
I'm still learning. I'm old enough, but it's fun, so I like it.
So I guess there's something in the future. What's that? What are you thinking of doing things? I mean, going, I mean, what could be your plans if you can just let us know?
The world has become so much smaller, and you and I having this conversation right now is proof of that in part. But you can relate to people all over the world now just online, and but if you can do it in another language, it's even more fun.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. Then in your journeys, in your occupation, maybe, I guess, like everyone else, you've had some challenges. What could that be? I mean, from your perspective, as you are working or maybe traveling, what could be those challenges that you may have faced?
Well, I guess to wax philosophically for a minute, it's both a blessing and a curse to have been able to live in so many different places. The curse part of it is the fact that I didn't put down roots. So I often envy people, particularly now in my old age. I envy people that have been in one place so long that they have this extensive network of local contacts and a support system, and they have roots. And I don't have that. So that's the cost that I paid to be able to at least remember the various places I lived. So that's the biggest challenge, is that I think now I have 3 children here because I got remarried in Kenya. So I raised one family, and we were together 23 years, but they're off in different parts of the world, and I never see them, because that's another downside of having lived in so many places. My 2 oldest kids stayed overseas. I have one boy in South America, and I have a daughter in Switzerland. And now I've got another family, and these are younger kids. I got a boy that's 19, and I got 2 twin girls that were born in Peru, and they're about to turn 12. So I'm telling them, you can forget about the Peace Corps. I don't want you to you can go to college anywhere you want, as long as I can drive there in half an hour. I don't want them to go long ways away from me and set up house. But it's a trade-off. And that frankly has been the biggest challenge. The fact that on the one hand, I don't see my oldest kids or my grandsons except for maybe once a year, and I don't have the roots and the support system here locally. At my age, it becomes important. All my friends are dying off. I wish I had a stronger support system locally.
I get it. And when you are in Kenya, you said you remarried in Kenya to a Kenyan or to someone else?
No, I married in Kyrgyzstan. I was already married when I went to Kenya, and she and I were together all the time I was there. We moved from Kenya to Honduras, but she was also an attorney in Los Angeles, as I was, and I gave up about 2/3 of my income, and she gave up 100% of hers. So, but when we got to Kenya, the government took care of us and they provided the housing. The housing was free for us, and so we lived a good life there. It was very comfortable, so we didn't look back. She became a writer, and I became a traveling, bureaucrat. So my
Mm.
my current wife I met in Kyrgyzstan. She was my Russian tutor in Kyrgyzstan, um, and she still is my Russian tutor. So
How long have you been together now?
it's been over 20 years
20
now.
years plus. Yeah, I'm
One,
guessing that your son is 19.
it'll be 21 years on July 5th.
Okay. That's good enough to give someone some marriage advice. And from the experiences that you have, can you maybe drop a few do's and don'ts of maintaining a marriage?
Well, I got to be careful what I say here. I think
She could be listening. She could be listening.
I, I think young people are waiting too long to get married now. I think they need to get married when they're younger. It's just the modern life has become so um, unnatural. I mean, you're ready to get married long before you're financially prepared to do that, and as a result, I think the decisions you make about the opposite sex and when you're very young should be trusted. If you find somebody that you really like and you're young enough and yet that person, you two can grow together and become closer and closer. If you wait too long, there comes a point where you're not going to grow together because you've already formed yourselves as adults, and you're not going to. You can make it work, but my advice is find somebody at a young age and stick with it.
Yeah. That's good advice. I think it's the same advice I had when I was young and I had made a decision. Uh, Maybe I had that advice when I was 20, 21, and then I said, I'm not going to go so many years without getting married. So I had made a decision that at 25, I'm going to get married. and, I got married at 24, just a week before I hit 25. So it's good. I agree to you. It's good to settle early in life, because you wait for so long and then you're going to make some mistakes and you never know.
Yeah. Well,
Uh-huh.
we all work on the margin of forces we barely understand, and that's one of them. It's one of life's big mysteries. But my hunch is it's better off if you choose your mate early in life and stay with that person.
Mhm. Hmm. Yeah, I know you share some, is it live tips, or I know there's somewhere that you can be found. Can you let the people know where they can find you, even maybe get your book from that place? Let us know.
Okay, it's on Amazon and it's on Barnes and Noble. This is a picture of it, and I have a website, but you have to put my middle initial in the website. It's Clifford H. Brown. H is in Harris, all one word .com. You can find my the two books are there, and also links to my social media. I write on a Substack. It's cliffordbrown.substack.com, but the website is Clifford H. Brown. And the reason the H is important is there was an American black trumpet player who was more famous than I am, and his name was Clifford Brown. So if you just search for Clifford Brown, you're going to end up with advertisements for jazz music, a trumpet player named Clifford Brown, and I'm Clifford H. Brown. So that's the website, cliffordhbrown.com.
So we all go to cliffordhbrown.com.
You got it. That's it right there. And then up at the top, you'll see little links to my Substack and my LinkedIn and my Facebook and stuff like that. So
Yeah, you can actually. I tagged the Substack link in the description so people can just get it. It is Clifford Brown, uh,
right, that's
Substack.com.
yeah. There's a lot of different articles there about. I mean, I call it a periodical, meaning whenever I get motivated and periodically I post some of my some of my writings there. So it's food for thought. Put it that way.
Yeah, tell us some things that you maybe would not want to leave this episode without saying.
Well, my cause right now is questioning national borders.
Mhm.
I've been in so many different places, and I have come to the conclusion that these borders that separate us are problematic. And one reason they're problematic is that they enable incredibly large militaries to be commanded by one person. And we're seeing some examples of some of the foolishness that can come of that now. And I'm not reluctant to say that I think the idea of having an enormous military respond to the notions of one man, whether it's in Russia, whether it's here, or anywhere, whether it's China, that military would not exist if those borders weren't where they are. And those borders got created because of selfishness.
Hmm.
And that's the only reason they got created. And they're doing more harm than good now. So I think they are an historical anachronism, just like monarchy once upon a time was a habit that the world had to break. I think the very concept of national borders is a habit that the world needs to seriously re-examine. And I realize that's a political pipe dream. That's not going to happen in my lifetime, but most of the major developments in the world from a political standpoint started as pipe dreams. That includes
Yeah,
communism and almost all of them. So
everything starts as a dream, and then one day it comes to be. Because I know back in Africa, I know people who are always fighting. They've been fighting for ages and ages. It never come to happen, but they say we want one Africa, not all those countries that we have.
yeah,
And so you say we want one world, not the many borders that we are having all over.
yeah.
Yeah, when we have someone who's done that, been there, done that, and has a lot of wisdom, which you mentioned in the beginning, I don't let them go from our episode without leaving us with one thing, just one thing that we should never forget. Which is that?
We're not so different. We are all pretty much alike. And I there's an old Chinese philosopher named Mencius who said that there isn't a human on earth, an adult human on earth, if they saw a child sitting on a well and that child was about to fall in, they would feel an impulse to run and save that child. Everybody has that. If they don't have it, something's very wrong with them. So, the days of labeling your enemy as some sort of evil bastard is just, that's crazy. They're good people. Everybody's got a lot of goodness in them. And I think we need to recognize that more.
Yeah, we need to recognize that more. That yeah, we've got some goodness. And that reminds me to tell people, hey, you can get my book out there. Is known as Be Good for Good. Go search on Google, Be Good for Good, and let's be good to each other. Let's help one another. Let's always be there for one another when there is need, just like they used to do in the foreign aid. And yeah, Clifford, thank you very much for coming into our episode.
Well, thank you so much I commend you for what you're doing, because spreading ideas is the most important thing we can do. Spread the right ideas. So
Yeah,
thank you for the opportunity.
thank you.
All right.
I appreciate that. And I also appreciate every person who may get to watch this or listen to this on our podcast platforms. Just search for a Broad Experience podcast, and you'll get to listen to this episode, past episodes, and future episodes. And now we've come to the end of this podcast, this episode. And until next time, this has been your host, Anthony Murore, and together with our wonderful guest, Clifford Brown, we're saying bye for now.
Kwaheri.
Kwaheri.